Thank you, Paul.
Giving you a lot of time.
Hey, welcome everyone to the August Council meeting. I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and recognise their incredible stewardship of the land on which the town of Bassendean sits over many, many thousands of years. Just also want to remind people that tonight's meeting is recorded and live streamed so that members of our community who are at home are able to access the council business. Order on my agenda is a little strange. There are no presentations this evening. Item 3 is attendances, apologies and applications for leave. So Councillor Bob Brown is an apology tonight due to being unwell. Are there any applications for leave from councillors? No. Okay, item 4 is public question time. We have some items at 4.1 from questions that were taken on notice from the previous meeting. 4.2 is the opportunity for people in attendance this evening to ask any questions related to the council's business. Is there anybody who would like to ask any questions this evening? No? Mr. Bridges.
Thank you. Paul Bridges, West Road. Not that you don't know that. All right, look, it's my perennial question on the implementation of the Municipal Heritage Inventory. I've got an answer in the minutes which is sort of a bit wishy-washy, which I keep getting told, you know, it's going to happen 3 to 4 weeks, I'm going to write to that. What's the actual status of it?
Mr. Butler, are you able to answer?
Specifically, the question is, has Brian written to the 48 property owners at this stage?
Thank you, through the chair. I'm not 100% sure as to exactly where things stand in that respect. Could I perhaps invite Mr. Bridges to come into the office sometime during the week and meet with both myself and Mr. Reid, and we can talk through exactly where things are at and what is planned from here? Yeah,
that's what it says in the minutes, and I get invited to come in and discuss the matter, you know, if I have any queries. Quite frankly, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to discuss it. I want the council staff to implement the recommendation of council from 15 months ago, not to say it's going to happen in a few weeks and the like. So I'd be really pleased, I will come in and talk to you, but I'd be really pleased if it's just done, not talked about. And I notice in the quarterly report for the quarter April to June, it says finalise and implement the Municipal Heritage Inventory, and then it says the inventory was finalised last year. Well, that's fine, but you've got to implement it, otherwise it doesn't have any meaning. All right, that's my question.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, Mr. Bridges, I believe we've got a meeting tomorrow or the next day.
Thursday.
I will make sure that I have an answer for you then.
Thank you.
Ms. Jacobson.
Nonnie Jacobson's, Barton Parade, Bassendean. I've got a sort of question regarding Sandy Beach, and also I noticed that Bindaring Park, although I think it really meant Pickering Park, is mentioned here in terms of jetties in the agenda, and looking at replacing and repairing jetties that are considered unsafe. Has the Point Reserve jetty been looked at?
Do you know the answer to that, Mr. Adams?
Yeah, sorry, through the chair, I'm unaware if we've looked at that jetty.
Are there concerns about that jetty?
Yeah, I did bring it up at the previous council meeting, it might have been the one before that the jetty to the upstream side at Point Reserve has extensive termite damage.
It's ringing a few bells. And our CEO is taking note of that, so
Okay.
sure we follow it up now.
We'll take that on.
Thanks. Ms. Siddell.
Hi, it's Carol Seidel from 55 Broadway, Bassendean. I see there looks like there's going to be an installation of a bus stop, a shelter in Penzance Street. I'd like to remind council that a lot of bus shelters have been removed, and I can give you an example. There's one in Walter Road near Ivanhoe Street as you head into Walter Road. Also, there's one in Broadway just up near Penzance Street. it's really sad when you see people, especially elderly, having to sit on the curb. I don't think they should have ever been removed in the first place, but I would like to see the council be really proactive in replacing all the bus stops that shelters that have been removed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's unfortunate that a lot of those bus shelters were removed. I'm not sure if you're aware, but that was through the state government requiring them to be removed when they weren't disability accessible. I guess council would be seeking support from the state government to replace those shelters, seeing as it was them that implemented the removal at that stage, and that's what we've managed to achieve with these two particular bus stops, which has been a good outcome.
Well, what I noticed, like if you go down Reed Street, there's one of the old bus shelters which with a fantastic mural on that's stood the test of time for over 20 years, is that right? And it didn't need altering 1 degree. It's still there and it's okay as far as the state government's concerned. So then when you see, like we had a similar bus shelter up there in Broadway and a similar one in on Walter Road that was removed, and you just think, well, you know, what's that all about? So it's a bit like it's a double standard, and I think it's regrettable that they were removed, but I think we have to ensure that they are replaced, because, you know, you're going to be asking people to sort of stand out there in the summer and let's get the skin cancers going. You're going to be having them standing out there in winter and let's get drowned. And
I don't think you'd find any disagreement in this room about.
I know, we'll all agree to agree.
Yeah, it would be great to have support from the Department of Transport or the PTA to fund those being reinstated. So that would be a great place to advocate as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any statements by members of the public? Ms. Jacobson, and then you, Mr. Bridges.
Nonnie Jacobson, Spartan Parade, Bassendean. I'd just like to say how amazing it was on Sunday to be down at Swan Districts and listening to the incredible presentations by Lisa Last and Josh Byrne about Verge, about the potential of our Verge in Bassendean and what an incredible space it can be, and how it is our most shared space that we've all got. Everyone's either got a Verge or they walk past one or they drive past one every day, and the possibilities. And I just think it was a really fantastic presentation, the depth and the breadth that was covered there, and the enthusiasm by all the people who attended it was just really good, and I'm just really proud of this town.
Oh, that's so lovely. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I really enjoyed it too. It had such a positive vibe and lots of people that aren't necessarily involved regularly. Yeah, it was fantastic. Mr. Bridges?
Paul Bridges, West Road. Couple of points. On the agenda for tonight, you've got the a revival of the Pickering Park boat ramp. Now, that application was rejected in the past, and for very good reasons. And I would warn councillors or councillors to be wary of it coming forward again. The little ramp there does need some work on it, there's no doubt about that. It's got a small parking area, and all of which is in the floodway. Now, when you look at the marine standards that would apply to, you know, an upgraded facility and new parking, you're looking at 11 to 12 metre parking bays that will take the four-wheel drive and the trailer, and that they have to be established a half a metre above the 100-year flood level. Now, I know the 100-year flood level has dropped a bit, but all of that area that encompasses the car park and the boat ramp is in the 100-year floodway. So if the car parking is to be put in there, the new $90,000 design will take you to marine standards. Now, the only way over that is to go over the other side of Bassendean Parade and start to fill within Bindaring Park. Now, it's a highly, it's not the way we should be going. It's a small local ramp for canoes and tinnies, and a lot of people drive down there, put the tinny in, off they go, and then, mum or your brother takes the car home, and then you ring him up when you're back. And that's the level it should be. So rather than wasting money on, big expensive reports, do what is required by the local people, and move on. But don't get into this trap of huge studies that we're paying big money for. other thing I'd
just
like
before
to
you go
raise-
on, just thank you for your comment. I think the comments that were around the table last week at the briefing session somewhat reflected what you were speaking
Okay, yeah.
to.
Been there, done that. Yeah. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Okay, the other one that I want to raise is the implementation of council resolutions. What that's supposed to be is when a resolution of council has been implemented, then it is revoked. Now, I noticed that some of and there's a whole bank of resolutions that are up there, and the comments are, will be addressed, to be incorporated, will be included in OCM agenda, to be considered. Now that's not implementation of council resolutions, that's getting rid of them and sort of parking them somewhere else. I don't think it's good enough. The implementation of council resolution is when it's been implemented. Thank you.
Again, thanks for your comment, and I know other councils have raised similar comments. Just to shine a light on what the staff, I think, thinking is that there's another system that is being developed at the moment so that there's visibility of all those outstanding council resolutions and in a place which makes more sense and a link to key projects. However, take your point, and I'm sure that it's going to be raised when we get to that item.
Sure, but you can do that, and then after that's been implemented, then you revoke them.
All right. Sorry, Ms. Sedell.
Oh, yeah, I realise if I make a statement, it's got nothing to do with what's happening tonight, so I better sit here and be lazy. It's an observation I've noticed in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
You can come and make your observation.
Go for it, okay. For the last 2 months, I've been going. It's Carol Soul, 55 Broadway, Bassendean. For the last 2 months, I've been doing my entry for the Bassendean Visual Art Awards, and so I'm basically drawing Bassendean. And it's been a really interesting, eye-opening experience for myself. We are seeing houses disappearing every week in the town of Bassendean, and what I am noticing is it's all being replaced with grey houses with dark grey roofs. There doesn't seem to be any mix of colour. And to me, this is a real worry. And we have some houses that I consider are unique to Bassendean, and you just know that they are just going to disappear because of progress. And I think we need to be very conscious while we're wanting to, have Bassendean progress, but I think we need to be aware we're also losing what's really great about Bassendean. So that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Can I just ask you, have you given feedback through Bass and Dream Our Future?
What was that?
Have you given feedback through Bass and Dream Our Future yet?
Yes.
No, but I've done some of it, but not all of it. Yes,
Please do, because that's what it's all about, is making sure that...
Well, you can enjoy
She
my
has.
entry.
Good.
and see it.
All right, thank you. Item 5, confirmation of minutes. So 5.1A is relating to the ordinary council meeting held in July. Do we have a mover that the minutes be received? Councillor Gangel moved, seconded by Councillor Quinton. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 5.1B, that they are a true record. Moved Councillor Gangel, seconded Councillor Quinton. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 5.2 is the special council meeting held on the 20th of August to adopt the budget and the workforce plan. Do we have a mover for 5.2A? Councillor Gangel, seconded Councillor Hamilton. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. And 5.2B, that they're a true record. Moved Councillor Gangel, seconded Councillor Hamilton. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 6 is announcements. So just on that point about Bass and Dream Our Future, the consultation period for that is finishing in September, so that's prior to our next ordinary council meeting. So just encourage everybody who hasn't yet given feedback to make sure they take that opportunity. Item 7 is petitions, of which there are none. Any declarations of interest for items on tonight's agenda? No, there's no business deferred from the previous meeting, so we'll move on to item 10.1, which is the reports to be carried on block. So at the moment I have the following coming out of on block. I've got 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, 10.6, 10.8, 10.9, 10.10, 10.11, 10.17, 10.19, 10.20, 10.21, 10.22, 10.24, 11.1 and 13.1. Are there any others, Councillor Gento?
Yes. Just in case they weren't pulled out, I think just about everything's been pulled out. 10.13 and 10.14.
Town Assets Committee and Design, Basso?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Yep.
Anything else? Okay, so then we have a mover for the remainder to be carried on block. That's Councillor Wilson moved, seconded Councillor Mikachuk. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. So we'll go on to item 10.3, which is the bus shelter installation. Are there any questions on this item? Councillor Gento?
Yeah, just very quickly, Your Worship. I did see in there here it is. Just the maintenance fund of $400 each year. Obviously, I'm assuming that's what we allocate to each bus stop every year for cleaning and the like. So it's like the pressure spraying stuff, and also I suppose any anti-graffiti removal. Is that what that's for? Yep, wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilson?
If you could remind me, which was the bus shelter council resolved not to go ahead with the bus?
The Devon Road bus shelter. In the officer recommendation and the attachments, there's the styles that were proposed, and at the briefing session there was some conversation around whether or not those were the styles that councillors wished to pursue. Having looked at the styles, I was more in favour of the one such as is pictured for Old Perth Road. I'm not sure how other councillors feel about that, but I would be happy to move the officer recommendation with that slight amendment as written on your paper to support that alternative style, if others were in agreement to that. Are you seconding that, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Can I just ask another question of the officers? I read in, I think it was the attachments, that we have a spare shelter that's being housed somewhere to be used at some time in the future. I'm assuming that's because it's too big to use in the James Street location, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's a shame. So.
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, so then can you remind us that can't go into Devon Road now, so it's just going to sit there? Because I thought that we're going to have to pay for Devon Road.
We're not putting one in Devon Road.
Pardon?
We're not putting one in Devon Road. We resolved not to.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
This is why I'm asking the question.
So the insurance claim went in last November. That bus stop got built from that insurance claim. So that bus stop can go back into a similar type of location. It can't go into the James Street location because it's too big.
Can I go back into Devon Road? No.
It could, but we don't want it to go back into Devon Road. It could go into
Thank you, I just needed to be reminded.
Councillor Hamilton?
So could I ask the staff if they might investigate some of the sites mentioned by residents this evening? For instance, I know that the one up at near the corner of Walter Road and Lord Street is used by a great number of elderly people because it's right next to the retirement, well, semi-retirement place. So would staff investigate utilising that bus shelter in another location ASAP, because it seems ridiculous for it to be sitting in a shed?
Yeah.
Okay, so potentially we could add a seventh point to the amendment, so requesting staff investigate locations for the spare bus shelter?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Possible locations for spare shelter. So Amy, there was just the change to point 6. Have you got that one? And then what have you got for point 7?
That staff investigate possible locations for the installation of the spare shelter.
Perfect. Okay, so I move that motion, seconded by Councillor Wilson, assuming you're happy with that amendment. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 10.4 is the community group's funding applications. Councillor Hamilton, did you have a question on this one?
I did have a question which I sent by email to the staff. It was answered. I just found that the Eden Hill Can budget, the way it was outlined, was extremely clear and provided great clarity to councillors. However, I found that the other budget details provided by the other company for the production of in situ was somewhat difficult to understand. I think perhaps possibly because there was some information left off, but in any case, I understand that the entry price charged for people attending that will be $25 a head. So I think my questions were answered by email.
So no further questions? Do we then have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Mikachuk, seconded Councillor Gangel. Anybody against?
Sorry.
All those in favour? Carried unanimously. 10.5, the recreational boating facilities scheme application for the boat ramp at Pickering Park. Questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So for the benefit of those who weren't at the budget briefing session last week or missed it, could you just characterise the offer, I suppose, that the state government put to us and confirm perhaps that what they were suggesting was that they would either shut...
I think you're talking
I'm on
about
the
the next
item.
one.
Yeah, wrong
Yes.
item.
Sorry, I've jumped the
The
gun.
boat ramp application.
Ah, yes, the boat ramp application. The repairs that were recently carried out on the boat ramp to remediate the undercut that was there, what's the estimated life of or longevity of those repairs before additional remediation or repair will be necessary?
I believe the repair work to the toe of the ramp is probably going to give it 5 years. There is concern regarding the pavement and the river wall protection around the pavement and the constant ingress and egress of water that's going to continually undercut that pavement. And I suppose that's why the infrastructure section is putting this up for consideration, as we believe that there needs to be something done. We understand the history and the requirement to try and keep it as a local boat ramp, but we are concerned about the funds it'll take to repair it, and also taking into consideration Swan River Trust's liability on these assets, the river walls, the river banks, and the ramp itself.
I just have a further question on that. So when this came to us previously, it was the same figures. So it was $90,000 for the design. And my recollection of the plans at that stage were quite elaborate. And there was a much more extensive car park. There was a pontoon in addition to the boat ramp. If we were looking at doing something smaller, so to be able to maintain the asset more as it currently is, I imagine there's scope for it to be a lot less expensive than what's proposed here.
Yeah, that's agreed. We have put in a larger amount, but we'd like to step into those negotiations with the Swan River Trust.
And would lighting be a potential inclusion in this project?
Yes, I believe so, yep.
Councillor Hampton?
A couple of questions. My recollection of the problems with the jetty that had to, or the boat ramp, sorry, that had to be rectified and caused it to be closed for some time was undermining by erosion, and that some of this was caused by boat wash. Is that correct?
I think so, yes.
Okay. So, you've mentioned a couple of other government departments. So, would I be correct in assuming that until we confront the issue of boat wash and the deterioration and the degradation it has on our riverbanks, that any remediation that we do is going to be negatively affected. Would that be correct?
I suppose through the chair you're asking for my opinion. I would say no. No.
Okay. Finally, when you did do the repairs on that boat ramp, my recollection is that those repairs came to a value of less than 15,000. Would that be right?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. So has the town staff done any sort of calculation on what it might cost to repair some of these other issues that you've mentioned, i.e. the surfacing of the parking, perhaps some LED lighting, and also you mentioned in the report there's an area adjacent to the launch where boats come in without coming onto the boat ramp, and you want to stop that. So have staff considered how much it would cost the town to do those things?
Yeah, the cost would be significant to do the pavement repairs. The pavement has failed. That would need reconstruction for pretty much all of it, going through the attachments. The current level of degradation and scouring is significant as well, and would need significant expenditure on that. I'm assuming there's no power right to this area, so that'd be a couple of $1,000s, probably a linear metre to install.
Why would we need power if we do solar?
Well, we could do solar, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So knowing that these are annual rounds, and we've just done the repairs to the ramp, and also considering we just did our budget in the last couple of weeks and set up our priority projects for the coming 6 months at least, into a new community strategic plan, would there be any issue that you can identify with us deferring this for a period of time and revisiting it again for the round next year?
Yeah, I'm quite comfortable if that's council's decision that we do that. It will, get worse, but it is manageable for a year. So, yeah.
Thanks. Any further questions? Okay, so we've got the officer recommendation. We also have an alternative from Councillor Hamilton. Are you moving the officer recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, so do we have a seconder for the officer recommendation? Okay, so that lapses. Councillor Hamilton, you have an alternative.
Mine was actually just a little bit of wordplay on Councillor Quinton's original. You can read it.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Shall I read it out?
Yes, please.
Okay. That council defers a decision on submitting an application for the recreational boating facility scheme this financial year, and prior to any future application, firstly undertakes community consultation regarding the boat ramp facility at Pickering Park, including but not limited to how many people use the ramp and how often, what size boats they use, etc. Furthermore, that a draft of proposed community consultation be provided via the CEO bulletin to councillors for input prior to community distribution.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Councillor Hamilton? Because you've used the word community consultation, but then what you're asking for really sounds much more like an audit of the current usage.
Yes, probably it is an audit really, now that you mention it.
Just so the staff are clear what you're asking for.
Well, an audit would accomplish, it's gathering information which we don't have at this moment in time, so an audit would accomplish that. I'm perfectly comfortable with changing that to an audit.
Okay. So undertakes an audit regarding...
Yep.
Amy, are you got that? Okay. All right, so Councillor Hamilton's moved her alternative. Are you seconding that, Councillor Quinton?
Yep.
Is there anybody against? Councillor Gangel and Councillor Wilson. Would you like to open debate, Councillor Hamilton?
I fully comprehend the desire by the staff and the administration to upgrade this facility. However, it has undergone recent repairs which at last week's briefing session we were advised would sustain the facility for possibly another 5 years. So there's no urgency right at this moment to jump into an application. My concerns about the application and the information presented was that it seemed sizable, that almost $90,000 or $90,000 plus on just plans for this facility seems excessive for what it is. It is a local facility that is primarily used by local residents and small boats. One has to worry about, with a $90,000 plan, what might come out of that. And I think that our desire to retain some of our natural areas is strong in this town. And also one has to consider the access into that area is via a roundabout and a small narrow road. So we don't wish to be building giant facilities that would then have a roll-on effect where council would be obligated to change the structure of the road infrastructure entering into that premises. So I would suggest that we have more than enough time to defer this for a year or two to examine our options, and then perhaps, if required, put an application in later in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Quinton?
Thank you. I think it's good governance when we ask what questions we need to be informed in order to make $90,000 decisions just to get a fancy report. I think it would be only benefit us in order to make an informed decision to find out how many people use the ramp and what size boats that they would have. I don't understand why if there wasn't a seconder for the officer recommendation, that this alternative is to just defer the grant application for another year, so that we can be fully informed on the decision going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Worship. I don't support the officer recommendation because I don't support an upgrade of the facility to a larger capacity than is required. But similarly, I don't require, at least not for my own information, a community survey or consultation to be done about the number of uses of the ramp to inform the position that I have. So my position is that we should have no resolution about this at all, that we should instead have a look at what the remediation and repair issues are that are necessary to maintain it at the current size that it's at, and deal with it through the normal budgetary processes that way. The conversations that I've had with people who use the facility give me the very strong impression that they are happy for it to be the size that it is. It keeps away the larger boat users who are then required to go and use the facility down the road in the town of the city of Bayswater. It isn't widely used, but it's an existing asset which I think we should maintain and spend as little money as is possible or is necessary to maintain it in its current format. So for that reason, I think the item should lapse.
Thank you. Is there a speaker for the motion? Councillor Mikachu?
I won't go over what's already been covered, but I think it's prudent and good governance that our expenditure reflects need in the community, and when there are limited resources going around, I think it's very important that we understand what that need is and then make a decision according to that based on the feedback. I think, we are clear that this isn't something that needs addressing immediately, and that waiting some time to gain the information would be prudent. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Genja?
Thank you, Your Worship. No surprise here, I have a differing view. This has now come through, not one, but two administrations to do this project. This project was, in fact, successful in getting budgeted. The council on the changeover last time gave the funding back to the state government. And I know there has been wording around there, $90,000 plan. Well, in fact, 75% will actually be funded by the state. It's a very small proportion that will actually be funded by the town. Also, it effectively, under this, it's not just about building the ramp. It actually does the consultation process people are talking about. We look at marine safety of the area. We actually look at the Swan River Bank environmental study, geotechnical investigation, and a flood levels and current study surrounding the boat ramp site, conduct consultation with key stakeholders, and provide detailed drawings, tender brief and specifications and detailed cost estimates for points 1 to 4. So council would then know whether or not this is indeed a facility that is usable into the future and what the potential cost would be on the ratepayer. Deferring it yet another year effectively defers it for potentially 2 years with the budget rounds that we need to go through. This is a community asset. In the agenda later on, I read that obviously Bassendean hasn't been as successful as envisaged, but what I did note in the comments that we've been given back, the number one asset people have, and quite rightly in Bassendean, is the river. The number one thing that they want from the town is to make sure they have assets which can be utilised for the greatest natural resource we have, which is the river in the town. So I would urge councillors, in fact, to support this application, allow the process to go through. Again, we're contributing 25% overall funding. We had this approved previously. It should be approved again. It does everything that the recommendation is actually offering, and it'll actually give us a much thorough outcome for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Thank you for your passion, Councillor Cannon. As stated, this is a local area and it attracts the locals to that area. Clearly, some work needs to be done, but also clearly, given the recent works that have been done, there's no urgency. So I see, given that the rounds I think are in September, from what the staff said, I see no urgency. Even if we do defer it for this financial year, there's still the potential for the staff to come back with the potential of doing an application in the next financial year.
2 years.
But I think it should be an application that is in proportion to what is the site. Much as you've mentioned all those studies that go with this, I do perceive the $90,000 plan may well
It's not
be...
the town plan for 90,000, so correct.
I agree with that, Councillor Gang. I understand that. But a $90,000 plan for what it is excessive, in my opinion.
25% of which the town will pay.
Councillor Cahill.
Anyway, I would urge councillors to vote for this alternative.
What's
Thank
the cost without the plan?
Okay, we hear that you're not happy with that, Councillor Cahill. Okay, all those in favour? So we have Councillor Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan. Against the gentleman, Councillor Wilson and Gangel, and that is carried. 10.6, this is the Sandy Beach Reserve Jetty and Foreshore River Wall.
Oh, there it was. Oh, there it was. Thank you, Your Worship. Oh,
You have a question now?
Well, just to seek clarification, Your Worship. I was looking through the attachments. I couldn't find it, but I've actually highlighted it here. Just wanted to check that this is accurate and correct. Through the Bassendean Drain project, there has been feedback received on river and jetties in the town. Proximity to river and the number of the most common theme of response to the question of why people choose to live in the town of Bassendean. Another ask was how the connection to the nature of the Swan River was enhanced. Just wanting to confirm those dot points are accurate as printed, Madam CEO.
Yes, they came through the valuable process.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else that wants to make a point? Ask a question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Even if it is a rhetorical question. So, at the briefing last Tuesday, I came away with the understanding that the state government effectively gave us an ultimatum, which was either we take over the responsibility for the maintenance of the jetty, or they will shut it down and remove it. Is that understanding correct?
Through the Chair, that was the dialogue that they first gave us. The dialogue has somewhat changed in the last couple of weeks, where they would like a letter of support that that would support their grant funding application.
And the grant funding application, as I read in the papers last week, was for a much larger and new and improved jetty. What is the attitude that they had in those discussions to just repairing the existing jetty as is?
You can't. It's stuffed.
Yeah, through the chair, repairing the existing jetty does not allow for boats to pull up to it, and so they're aware that the community do pull up, the community boats do pull up to this existing jetty, so they recognise the need to provide some level of upgrade to cater for how it is currently being used.
And at any time in the discussions was the option canvassed that just the existing size jetty that is currently there would just be repaired and brought up to specification?
So we did ask about that, but it was their perspective was to upgrade it to the next level.
It's correct that it's beyond its useful life, the existing jetty, so that it would require replacement, whether it was of the same scale or the larger scale that Councillor Wilson was referring to. Actually, repairing the existing one is not an option because it's so degraded.
Correct.
We didn't say we're getting rid of it. We said we're maintain.
And so if we don't agree to A, larger jetty, and B, taking on the responsibility of the maintenance for the jetty, what is the consequence according to them?
I don't have any facts on that, so I can only offer my opinion. My opinion is that we should challenge them on it. That's just my opinion. I think it's fair and reasonable for both state and local government to take some responsibility in these areas. That's just my opinion. But I can't say for fact exactly what their stance is.
Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Genjo.
So, having read a lot of this material, somewhere in here I read that they maintain their tendency is to offload the assets to local governments and retain those ones where they have boating transport going to those jetties. So given that they want to enlarge the size of this jetty and make it acceptable for boats to whatever boats do when they land there, yes, would there be potential in the future for the government to actually do a service to that jetty? And if so, what happens if we've been, for whatever reason, compelled to take over the maintenance of that jetty and then they suddenly decide they're going to have a service to that jetty? How do we stand in that circumstance?
Again, through the chair, you're asking for my opinion, but
Yep.
my opinion would be that if that was to be the case, there would probably need to be further upgrades to accommodate public transport, but I would presume that would attract more. The whole process would attract more funding and be given appropriate consideration by state government. I don't think state government would hand over some public transport asset or bring in public transport into a jetty and rely totally on the local government to fund and maintain.
You can, of course, understand my reservations, though, that if a council is taking over an asset and then the circumstances for the utilisation of that asset change in the future, you can understand my reservations about that. So thank you for your advice, sir.
Councillor Genjo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wondering, I would look in the budget items myself, but we no longer reveal the budget line items amounts. Just for my knowledge, how much maintenance do we align to Success Hill Jetty?
To the pontoon there, do you mean?
Yeah, each year the jetty at Success Hill. How much in maintenance do we allocate for each year?
I imagine they may have to take that on notice, would you?
Yeah, and also because it does come with the fact that the town would be looking at maintaining the jetty. I would just be interested in obviously knowing Point Reserve as well. How much is allocated in maintenance to the jetties? My recollection is not a great deal, but just wanted to know.
So you did provide some information today, not on the Success Hill pontoon, but on the current jetty, was it, for what you proposed would be the maintenance costs and cost for replacing it? Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
I think my estimate was similar to the briefing session, where it would be 300.
Oh, that was to replace, yeah, sorry, it wasn't so much the
Ongoing
maintenance, my
maintenance,
apologies.
Yes, thank you. Yes, a couple of questions that I wanted to follow up from last week. First is the results of their own survey. Were we able to get a copy of that?
No, we couldn't get a copy, no.
Why not? Did they give a reason why?
I think the reason that we tried to give last week was that there didn't seem to be a formal
So they didn't
survey.
do a survey, they just asked a couple of people down there.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other question I had is I asked if we could get in writing a solid, either there on here or there, if we don't take on maintenance of it, that they will completely decommission it and not build another one. Did we get that in writing?
No, through the chair, we did ask that question. The answer came back that if we did provide a letter of support, that would strengthen their grant funding approach.
So if we provided a letter of support for retention of the jetty facilities but did not commit to taking over the maintenance, that would serve their purposes in potentially getting the grant funding at this stage?
I think it's a good approach.
So the alternative that Councillor Hamilton has proposed meets those requirements. Did you want to?
Do you want me to read it out?
Yes, well you can move it if
Just-
there's a second.
I'd like
we can.
Happy to move the officer
Well, I
recommendation.
think Councillor Hamilton's already standing up at the moment,
Sure.
Councillor
Yeah, good luck.
Angel.
Oh, that's fine. Speaking against.
So Amy, do you have a copy of what Councillor Hamilton was proposing?
Okay, I've made a slight change at the end. That Council 1 receives the visual condition inspection report, December 2018. 2, receives the update provided by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions. 3, supports the CEO to provide a letter of support to DBCA in relation to that department's applications seeking grant funding for decommissioning and replacement of the jetty, where A, the town of Bassendean supports retention of a jetty facility for use, in particular noting the new playground and ablution block facility to be installed at Sandy Beach Reserve in 2020, and B, the town's unwillingness to accept any proposed new structure jetty as an asset and take on its management and maintenance. And 4, reconsiders this proposal to update the jetty and the foreshore stabilisation once the outcome of the 2 grant submission processes are known. 5, requests DBCA engage with the Department of Transport re developing strategies to combat speeding boats that contribute to riverbank degradation within the town of Bassendean River districts, and provide a report re the outcome of those discussions.
Can I just
Full
make
stop.
one? So in your point 3 at the moment, you're talking about providing a letter of support. You mentioned the jetty, but you don't mention the foreshore stabilisation. So can I suggest that
Can
after
I
the word
actually
jetty, you
make
add
a comment there? From my reading of the documents, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the first grant that they're applying for is for the actual decommissioning and construction of the jetty, and then it goes on to talk about a second grant process which is for stabilisation of the thing, and that...
Let's get some clarification, because I think they need a letter of support for both processes at this point today.
The first letter of support is to step into the design process. So not the design, and obviously the construction would flow
The
on.
design of the river stabilisation as well as the jetty.
No, they are two separate.
Two separate.
So it's design of the jetty, design and concept plan of the jetty, and then we need to apply for the design of the concept, the design of the river wall protection.
Now, the way I read it was that we do that after, that's in sequence, and that we can only get a maximum of 50% funding for that work. But the way I read the document was that it is a 2-step process, that the first process is applying for the grant for the initial planning or plans or whatever, and then the second process is the actual works where DBCA have to apply and we have to apply separately for the wall. Is that right?
We apply separately
For the wall.
for the wall.
So they
Yeah.
don't need a letter of support for the forestry stabilisation at this point. So as Councillor Hamilton's written it, it's not a problem for what DBCA is seeking at this point in time.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Amy, are you okay with that? Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Wilson? We know Councillor Gangel is against. Councillor Hamilton, would you like to open debate?
Okay. As we know, we're a town with multiple assets, all of them ageing, some of them past their due by date. So I think it would be negligent of us to actually take on maintenance of another asset when we certainly are in a position where we cannot even renew our existing aged assets at this time. So I believe that this is an asset which should be maintained by the state government. I think that at this point in time, I don't believe there's any reason why a council should take on management of that asset and maintenance of that asset. So I think this is an appropriate way forward, and I would urge councillors to support my alternative motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to second the amended motion put forward by Councillor Hamilton. In part because of the concern that I have in a trend in recent times from the state government to both strip assets out of our community and then seek to shift costs onto the local government for things that have been traditionally a state government responsibility. We've seen it, as mentioned earlier tonight, with the bus shelters, where the state government has come in and arbitrarily removed a whole pile of bus shelters out of our town and then put it on our community to fund the replacement of them or substantially fund the replacement of them. And now we see this trend has shifted to include the jetty, an asset that belongs to the state government, that is the state government's responsibility to maintain for the benefit of our community. And now they're trying it on, I think is a fair way to describe it. They're trying it on to see if we will take over the recurrent maintenance costs for an asset that has always belonged to the state government. I am very happy to second this motion because I think it's about time that we stood up to the state government, their attempts to asset strip and cost shift onto the town, and I think we should urge the state government to replace the jetty with something that can be used and enjoyed by our community and continue to maintain that jetty as is their responsibility.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. It's time to succeed. Councillor Gangel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, look, no wonder Bassendean, our future, has been somewhat lacklustre, to say the least, because what's the point of giving feedback when you're simply ignored? Jetties are very much an asset of the communities. Jetties are very much something that the communities utilise and enjoy. This is an opportunity, and as has been stated in the report, this is an opportunity so firstly, let's just highlight that that smaller jetties are no longer looked after by the state government. So it's an antiquated style that was done in previous decades, no longer the case now. So they've still got this particular jetty on their books. What they're wanting to do is work with the town, give a brand new jetty to the town. A brand new jetty that not only people can walk out on, but boats can dock at. Boats can dock at, where the town wants to spend in excess of thereabouts $1 million+ on putting a playground down there, putting a ablution box. But don't worry about that. We'll just have a jetty that's unusable, cordoned off or completely removed, and we won't work. We won't work with the state government to get a brand new jetty where boats can actually dock, where we can actually encourage people to come into the town, into our number one area that we're trying to promote by the river in the town. This is, my opinion, it is just a ludicrous decision not to work with the state government on this. My understanding that the maintenance of the jetty, certainly for equivalent at Success Hill, a newer jetty, isn't a great deal at all. Certainly hasn't been flagged with me as a massive hindrance on the town's finances through the budget processes. What's also dangerous, I think, is I'm currently agreeing with the new administration, which they might be on shaky ground if I'm agreeing with them. This should be supported. The community should actually be able to work, the council on behalf of the community should work with the state government to actually, and by the way, we're giving plenty of communities now, if we don't put in for this application for funding, if we try to create wriggle room and the like, we'll then give plenty of other councils the opportunity to get funding from state government because Bassendean's not asking for a cent.
So just to clarify on Councillor Gangell's point then, I do believe that our staff did make the suggestion that pushing back was an option. So to say that you're supporting the staff's position, I think you just need to be a little bit careful.
Well, I'm supporting the officer recommendation, which is the written staff position before potentially got to.
Any other people? Councillor Quinton?
Yes, thank you. I don't think anyone disputes the fact that we love this jetty. I might remind Councillor Gangell that I too grew up in this town and have spent a lot of time fishing and jumping off that jetty. I grew up on that jetty. I'd like my kid to grow up on that jetty. But this is a question of equitable funding here. We have a state government that has a $40 billion budget. $40 billion with a B, $1 billion budget. How much is our budget?
Well, they're wanting to give us a jetty.
No, and we are saying thank you so much, because the motion says the town of Bassendean supports retention of the jetty. We would love them to pay for our new jetty. We're not saying no to a new jetty. What we are saying no to is what we have conjectured last week at the briefing session when I asked the question of the staff was, what's the life of a jetty? 30 to 40 years. $10,000 per year of depreciation. How much does it cost to build a jetty? Probably around $300,000, right? Let's say in 30 or 40 years' time, that's $500,000, if not more, that we get lumped with, while they've got a $40 billion budget. I am pretty sure that they can afford $300,000 and the ongoing minimal maintenance that it's going to take so that our town can maintain this jetty. This is a responsibility of the state government. This is their asset, and they can continue to look after it because it is to the benefit of the town of Bassendean and the people of Bassendean.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hamilton?
This debate has been quite interesting because I'm sitting there wondering if a marginal seat would actually be compelled or forced to take on access, especially such a small seat. Bassendean is a small town. We don't have an excessive amount of money to spend on maintaining assets. We struggle to maintain the ones that we've got. We are certainly not the beneficiaries of any great pots of gold that drop in our lap from other entities on a regular basis. We tend to just raise the revenue rates and pay what we have to pay. We're good citizens. We keep on keeping a reasonable budget each year, and I'm sorry, but I object to being put in a position where we were last week being told that we must make a decision immediately, within 24 hours. Number one, that doesn't comply with our own local government timelines or regulations. Number two, this alternative motion is not offensive. What it does, it says, yes, we will offer you the letter of support that you're asking for, and that if the grant that you're asking for is successful, it'll come back to us and we'll reconsider it. That's what this motion basically says. So we haven't actually slammed the door on the state government. We are willing to work with them, but I do think that the manner in which this came to us and the pressure associated with the way it came to us really was designed to push us into a hasty decision. And I don't believe that we serve our ratepayers well when we make hasty decisions because of the pressure of other government departments.
You did on differential ratings.
Ah.
Okay, councillors, thank you.
Sorry, just making a point of order. There have been a lot of interruptions while other people are speaking tonight. The rest of us haven't been making these interruptions, and although they are entertaining sometimes, I just feel like we're getting to a point where respect needs to be shown.
Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Okay, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan, and against is Councillor Ganjo, and that is carried. 10.8, the draft park code policy. We have questions for the staff, but you also know there is a referral motion that has been proposed by Councillor Hamilton as well. Any questions on the policy before? No? Councillor Hamilton?
Okay. That Council defers this item pending a review of the draft policy by the newly appointed Director of Community Planning that includes but is not limited to examination of the following potential amendments. Now I've listed a whole host of amendments. Would you like me to read those out?
I don't think they're necessary. We have them documented.
The only thing I will read out is the last dot point. Additionally, the policy should specify the parameters for approval under delegated authority and offer dispute resolution via a final determination by Council if and when required.
Okay, so I'm happy to second that. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 10.9, the electoral caretaker period policy and review of committees. Are there any questions? Councillor Ganjo?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just note on your alternative that you also want to disband the town assets.
No, it's not disbanding town assets.
With the exception.
Yes. So as it's written in the officer recommendation, it would be being disbanded. So the intention of that is to continue the town assets committee, which is just comprised of councillors.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Up until the end of the term.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that meeting on the 10th of July.
Yeah.
My question was then going to, would we not look to disband design Bassendean as well?
So that's not a committee, that's an advisory group.
Oh, thank you. I knew there was an answer to that. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Can I ask a question? We also have the working groups, for instance, the local studies group, that is automatically disbanded at the election, correct?
I don't think any of them are automatically disbanded until we resolve to disband them.
So any committee structures remain as is until council chooses to disband, but the committee membership is dissolved at council election.
And working groups are the same?
Well, if they're not a committee like Design Basso can actually continue on in its current form. It's an advisory group.
Okay.
But if council chooses to revisit that, that's our option as well. Okay, so I will move the amended motion. Councillor Wilson has seconded. Amy, you have the copy, do you? Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 10.10, the employee reward and recognition policy. Are there any questions? Councillor Ganjo?
Yes, just a very quick one. What I spoke on last week, just want to check that there would be some sort of acknowledgements done for the end of year function.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
We'll align those to the Christmas
Thank you.
function event.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have officer recommendation. Is there a mover? Councillor Ganjo, seconded Councillor Wilson. Anybody against? All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. 10.11, the draft meetings procedures local law. Any questions on this one? our CEO just would like to speak briefly to point 2. Hold on. So on, when I say point 2, I'm talking about on the amended motion rather than the officer recommendation, which at this point is referring to our briefing sessions having a trial of going to the community, and at the moment it says commencing in September 2019. I'll let our CEO just speak to that for a moment.
Oh, I shouldn't have given you the heads up.
Thank you. I guess in acknowledgement of the fact that we are going into caretaker, the agenda items aren't that exciting over the next couple of months. So the idea is that we commence having briefing sessions in the community as of November with the new council.
So I'm happy to move the amended motion with that correction.
So point 3 is changing from September
That is
to November.
correct, yes.
So-
Is there a
Hang on, just
councillor?
we're on 10:11.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Just want to
Do
check
you have a
that.
question?
No, but this is the new standing orders.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it.
That's right.
Okay. And what attachment is that? Just so I can. I'm lost where I'm at.
Well,
Okay, no, here we go. There we go. Yes, so I do have questions. Thank you. Now, I just note going through it, there is a lot of when you look at, certainly with standing orders, if you want to have a look and look at something, and if you've got quite often I think the mayor may have one in the drawer there, the standing orders there when you want to look at it. There's a lot of reference made to this is dealt with within the Act, this is dealt with within the regulations, which if something came up and you said, well, hang on, what happens there? Oh, it's the Act. Then we have the Act. Oh, hang on, then what's this one? Oh, it's the regulations. Anybody got the regulations? So I'm not supportive of that. I understand in some points
Can I just make a comment on
Yes.
that? So this is a draft for consultation, and I actually raised the same point with Mel Shelley, who's been the author of most of this work, and I'm not sure whether this is passed on, because I made a request as well. The current version we have has those sections of the Act or the regulations inserted into the document. Is that the intention to do that in this case as well?
And normally in these types of complex documents, you would hyperlink. So if it referred to the Act, you would click on the Act and it would take you to that provision. So I think the way it's then presented in its final form can be a lot more user-friendly, but this is essentially designed as a consultation draft.
Okay. So the ones going out to the, so just so I understand it, so going out to the community will be all those inserted clauses.
Yeah, the links inserted.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I'm not in favour of urgent business. I don't think that should be on there, but I'll debate that. There's another area that I had. Just in relation to procedures for question time for the public, I just note we have this requirement in here for people to state their addresses. Considering we live stream this and given security concerns for various reasons, I don't believe we should have people state their addresses, especially when it's live streamed and recorded and kept in perpetuity for people to
Is
actually
there a
view.
requirement under the Act?
Yeah, I'd actually have to have a look at that because
okay,
most
yep.
of this is based on the model standing orders, which has been taken from the Act.
Considering that this is proposed for consultation, can that be looked
Followed
into
up.
and when it comes back to council we can have that feedback?
Just the other one, and this may again be part of the Act, just with deputations. I always thought it was in consultation with the presiding person or the mayor, but here it actually says it's the CEO.
It's not
Apply
so-
before the meeting to the CEO for approval.
That's right.
Yep.
I normally will
Yeah,
talk
but
to
can we put approval with in discussion with the presiding person or the mayor?
I'll
Yep.
follow that up and see
Thank
if
you.
it's possible.
What point is that on?
That is 6.10, deputations. The next one I had was 6.16, recording of procedures. Considering that, is that current as we currently have it with the live streaming? Because there's no mention of the. Well, I know it's visual audio recording, but there's no mention of the live streaming.
I understand it will be a requirement of the changed Local Government Act that will come in this year.
Oh, okay.
It will be mandated.
Because it says council will record the meeting for minute taking purposes only and cannot guarantee the accuracy or the quality of this recording, and it cannot be assumed to be a complete record of proceedings. And I understand that with the voice recording that we do, but obviously we live stream as well, and there's no reference to.
When we had the discussion around live streaming previously, there was the point made that even though there's a visual image as well as the audio, that sometimes there are people speaking that you can't see in the footage, so that you can't definitely attribute comments.
Yeah, but there's no reference to live streaming at all in the standing orders. So the other one actually is 16.17, number 4. A person shall ensure that his or her mobile phone or any other audible device is switched off and is not used during any meeting of the council. I think that's antiquated and should actually be removed, because obviously I think every device we've got here is actually recordable. Just 7.9. It says a member is not to address the council more than once on any motion or amendment, except A, as the mover of a substantive motion to exercise a right of reply, B, to raise a point of order, or C, to make a personal explanation. I think there should be a D there to ask questions, because we do through the back and forth actually ask questions. I think that may be. Yep, there we are. That's me done.
Okay. Councillor Gangel, are you happy? So our CEO is suggesting that she will go and have a look at those, and if they're possible to include and that the Act doesn't prevent them, that she'll include them in the draft document that goes out for consultation. Are you satisfied with that?
Well, I will be. No, I wanted to highlight those because I think I missed the working-shop that this had. So when I was going through it, but I will still be speaking against, because of urgent business and the like that we're trying to introduce now, which I don't believe should be on a council agenda.
Okay. So you've taken note of those. Okay. All right.
So can I?
Question?
Sorry. Do you want to go first?
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Thank you, Your Worship. My question relates to point 3 of the officer recommendation 1011, where I presume envisages the difficulties of doing recording in locations that aren't this room. But I wouldn't have imagined it was too difficult to do audio recordings. Has any consideration been given to the possibility of doing audio?
We could certainly look at the technology.
I guess it'll be site specific as well, depending on.
In some ways possible.
Is that a question, Councillor?
Can I ask some of the points that Councillor Gangel brought up? I'm quite interested in as well. So can I ask, when the CEO has investigated whether these things can be incorporated, would we as councillors be able to get an update by Councillor Bolton?
Certainly.
Is there any urgency in this being passed tonight? Would it be worth us deferring out you getting that information, bring it back to us, or does it mean we couldn't address this during caretaker period?
We can certainly address it during caretaker period, but it does go out for consultation for 6 weeks. So just thinking about the timing of new council and so on, whether this is part of their induction. So,
Councillor
I've seen a further question. On page 47 of 90 of the report, it makes reference to public question time, questions in writing where possible. The only problem is when I was looking through the standing orders, I couldn't actually see any reference to actually that in the proposed
So we're not able to make that a requirement. It's more a preferred procedure as opposed to something that we can put in our local law.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Coming back to a point about when we go out to other locations for the briefing, I do have some concerns about the variability of recordings and whether some locations will be worse than others. So So I think, my personal opinion is I think it might be confusing to the public if some meetings are recorded and those recordings are available and some are not. I think that ultimately in the end, I'm not sure how the administration feels about this, but perhaps it might be better to have just a clear cut. We do XYZ for the OCMs, but we do not do that for the briefings. So I'm wondering how that fits into all of this tonight. Do we vote on that? Do we debate that?
Certainly for the purposes of the briefings, there is no requirement to record, and I think the suggestion is in terms of so the idea is that we amend the electronic recording and live streaming of council meetings policy to remove the reference to live streaming and recording of briefing sessions in order to accommodate going out to the community. But the idea is that we will actually scope some of those potential venues to see what's possible, and obviously there'll be flexibility in terms of the configuration of the room, and there's obviously technology that we can bring in to accommodate recording. So I think it's doable.
My question is, then comes to, it may be doable, but also might come at a cost. Is it, okay, well, let's do another one. How many people tune in to, or listen or watch the recordings of our briefing sessions? Do we have any of those numbers? I'm curious about whether it's actually even worth the effort.
In terms of recording, or
well, okay. In terms of we live stream the OCM. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have more people watching that than we do the briefings.
That's correct.
So, does anybody know what numbers we have tuning into the briefings?
Not off the top of my head, but I know it's not high.
Okay. So if there is a financial cost associated with establishing recording equipment in off-site venues, I'm wondering whether it's actually worth it. That's my question to the administration. So I'm happy to support not recording the briefings.
Well, let's debate it.
Okay,
I have another question. Yes.
Sorry. Can I just clarify? At the moment, we're not debating whether or not, there's nothing in here that's saying whether or not we're recording. I guess what is in here is that there's a proposal for a trial and that the possibilities of recording would be investigated as part of that trial. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Just a quick one. I have noticed of late the preamble that is done at the commencement of council meetings is no longer done. May we, the council of the town of Bassendean, be mindful of the code of conduct, blah, blah, blah. Are we no longer doing that? Is that now gone?
Well, it's not part of the standing orders, and I just didn't feel like it was something that fitted with us being a more modern day local government. But if you would like to sit here again,
I just wanted to check. No, I just wanted to check that the preamble has gone. That's all I wanted to say.
Councillor Quinton.
I just wanted to ask if any thought had been put around, maybe this is a Mona question, ensuring that any of our outside briefing sessions comply with our disability access, and what kind of assurances we are going to have to ensure that there is some kind of, someone goes ahead and makes sure that it's accessible for wheelchairs and things like that, prams.
We are actually investigating options at the moment. No decisions have been made, but we are working towards making sure that whatever venues are selected are compliant in terms of disability access and along with a whole raft of other concerns. So these will be addressed.
Good to know. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. So, I think I have moved the amended motion. Is there a seconder for that at this point in time? that a yes or a no or an alternative motion, or what are you doing, Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm standing, as the standing orders are currently worded. I know that there's a move to change that in the proposed ones, but I'm testing to see whether you'd be amenable to an amendment of your alternate recommendation.
Okay, please tell me what it is.
At point 4, where it says remove reference to live streaming and the recording of briefings, what I'm curious is if you're happy to remove from point 4 the and the recording.
Yep.
So that it reads instead reference to live streaming of briefings. The intention being if we can do an audio recording, that's good. I understand that it's difficult to do a video live stream.
Does that work practically for Estelle?
Yeah, we'd actually have to have a look at each venue on a case-by-case basis.
It would just be a case of using a condenser microphone, which picks up everything that human ears do. So it's just choice of microphone.
Yeah. Sure, I'm happy with that. So we're removing remove reference to live streaming. Sorry, and the recording.
Yeah. So just to delete the words
Yep.
and the recording after streaming.
Yes. So are you seconding that then?
Yes, if you're happy to accept
Yes,
that amendment,
that's fine.
I'm happy to second it.
Councillor Gangel, are you speaking against?
I am indeed.
Okay. Very briefly, so I believe that the 2 points that Councillor Gangel maybe have some concern about are the urgent business item and potentially the community briefing sessions. In regards to the urgent business, I think that this is probably something that is going to be used very sparingly and would be there purely for those incidents such as the one we have on the agenda tonight with the men's shed, where something will be delayed if it is not put on the agenda this month and a project will be stalled as a result. I have faith that the administration are very diligently trying to make sure that everything that is on the council meeting agenda is on the briefing agenda as well, and I know that there are a lot of time constraints in order to achieve that at this point in time, and the urgent business item is purely there to recognise that there will be some instances where it is not possible but something does need to be addressed and should not need to wait an extra month. I'm supportive of us trialling the community briefing sessions. I personally don't have too much concern whether or not they are recorded, but happy to support the recording if that's what other councillors feel strongly about continuing. But I think it's a really good way for us to help engage members of the community who may not otherwise come into this chamber in a setting that's less formal, that they're more comfortable with, and particularly when there's items on the agenda that relate to the area where they're living and the location of our meetings. So I think it's a really good thing for us to try. If it doesn't work, we can always revert back to what we're currently doing, but it's something that would be definitely worthwhile investigating, and I'm also supportive of waiting until November to give that a go. I think that's all I need to say at this point. Councillor Wilson, what would you like to contribute?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in seconding the motion, pick up on Councillor Hamilton's concerns, I guess, about some of the cost implications of having an audio recording of the briefing sessions. What I find valuable in having a recording is that there is accountability for the advice that councillors receive from staff if it is recorded, and if there's no recording, there's no accountability on the advice that we're given. So it's a protective measure for the decisions we make on advice that we receive, if nothing else. And that's why I think it's valuable to maintain at whatever the cost.
Thank you. Councillor Gangel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Any, mini, miny, mo, where we'll go, you'll never know. Certainly, that's the case with the briefing sessions. That will be. We're going to start, in fact, next month. If had I not pointed out this afternoon, right in the heart of the caretaker period. Look, I don't think it's been thought out well. Certainly, since there's no list, there's been no auditing done of available venues for suitability and the like. Also, just with the briefing session, I'm against going to the community in a structured format. A briefing session is a very structured format. We have an agenda. We're going with our agenda, not actually giving open time to allow the community to express issues in their area. If you want to go out and genuinely engage with the community, you should do it more like a meeting of electors style meeting, where people just get the entire evening to themselves to come hear from council, speak to council, ask council questions without actually having to go through, which most people, I would say, would find a very dull process in sitting through a council meeting and then only having very limited time at the beginning to address council. And when you talk about addressing council, now what we're doing is we're trying to shove public question time further down the agenda, so people have to wait longer now under this proposal to ask questions. That's what we're suggesting that we're going to do. And then on top of that, we're now looking to put in urgent business that hasn't been on a public agenda, urgent business that the public hasn't had the opportunity to know that it's on an agenda, determined by the CEO and Mayor. I think that's a very, very dangerous process to go down. And there is a thing in the provision for special council meetings that gives the opportunity to call meetings outside of an ordinary council meeting that will give them the opportunity for an agenda to be put up on the website, a notification be given that people know. Not only that, I mean, big thing was made about this council's transparency and recording and the like, and now we're looking to potentially not be able to do the same with the briefing sessions. I'm somebody who likes to be up front. If you believe there needs to be a different approach taken to briefing sessions, then simply just bring that back as a report and say, look, perhaps it needs to be a more relaxed environment rather than such a formal environment when we go through the briefing sessions. But I'll certainly be speaking against this recommendation. Thank you.
Can I, just before you continue, there's an error. Just hold just accept this one. That's supposed to be in the other. So, councillors, my apologies. So, on this document that you've got with the proposed amendments, if you go back to item 10.9, I don't know how we're going to deal with this now. The point 6 on there actually relates to this item, which is about the rescission of the briefing session guidelines. Are people following me? Mm-hmm.
Oh, missed that.
Yeah, me too. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Ganjo. Your debate just brought that to my attention. Any advice on how we best deal with that? So we've already rescinded it as part of that previous motion.
Yeah.
So
we've rescinded.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Could we just make a comment that it's actually in respect to this agenda item? So it would become number 5. As part of item 10.11.
So, councillors, are you happy if we move a motion now? So, point 6 of item 10.9 that we just passed, which was the rescission of the briefing session guidelines, that should actually be part of this motion. If we just move that point relates to item 10.11. Are councillors comfortable with that, and are you following? Amy, are you? Yes. So I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder to make that correction? Councillor Mikachuk. Anybody against?
So just so I have it clear, I just want to so what does this? Because a lot of changes. That's what happens when you make a lot of changes.
The one that we passed previously that had the decision on it, and that's my error. I apologise.
Yeah.
So point 6 there. It was so we have a set of guidelines at the moment that relate to our briefing session that describe the briefing sessions that we currently have in this chamber with the structured order that you were referring to that relates very much to our standing orders.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was supposed to be part of this, and in my obviously I.
So you want to include it as part of the
We've already passed that, but
I know, but so theoretically, what I'm trying to understand is that it will then become 5 on this one.
That's correct.
So if it passes, then it's the same status quo. Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Is everybody clear on that? So I've moved it. Councillor Mikachuk seconded. Is everybody in favour?
Just to have it as 0.5. Yes.
We've already carried it.
Well, no, but I'm voting against it on on this one.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All those in favour? Have it as 0.5?
All right. Do I have it as a 0.5?
Yes. Okay. So it's carried unanimously.
Yep.
All right. So now we're back to having this. So Councillor Ganjo has spoken. Is there anybody who'd like
Sorry, I do have questions now. It just leads to further questions. So what happens now? So we've rescinded our guidelines for the briefing session.
Yes,
so
maybe ask the CEO to speak to that. point about the decision of the guidelines?
So the guidelines actually don't provide a lot of substance. There were actually some errors in them as well.
Yep.
Referred to common law, which was factually incorrect. The provisions of the guidelines are already covered for in the Local Government Act, but also 2 of the council policies as well. So it's a bit of a superfluous document, and as part of our review of policies, we've been trying to streamline and clean up, update policies.
Yep.
Okay. So just so that everybody's clear where we're up to, so we've got this motion in front of us, the amended 1011 with the 0.5 that we've already passed. I've spoken, Councillor Wilson has spoken in favour, Councillor Gangel has spoken against. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favour of the motion?
Yes.
Councillor Quinton.
I think this is an excellent and progressive move forward for a town who is doing everything it can to engage with our community. It's not uncommon for state and federal governments to do community cabinets.
Yeah, but
to go out into communities and engage with their community in a way that engages them in politics. We are every single election we are trying to win this elusive war about engaging more people in local government politics. There is tradition and there is the past. I want to acknowledge Councillor Gangel's very honourable traditional ways, but doesn't mean that it's the right way sometimes. Sometimes it's okay to go out into community. Sometimes it's okay to say, hey, we're going to come to you. Because, these chairs aren't necessarily the most comfortable. We could make it more comfortable. I just think this is a wonderful new progressive way of thinking, a new progressive way of engaging with our community, and I absolutely support it.
Is that a question?
Yes, it is. Your Worship, just wondering if anybody could tell me the last time that council undertook to take council meetings out to the community. How were they undertaken, and how well did it go? Oh, that's right. Nobody's here that remembers that.
I can't
Thank you.
comment, but I can comment from a state government perspective, and I've always had success in going to the people. I think it actually breaks the ice.
Yes,
and
but could I ask, when you say, thank you for raising that, Madam CEO, can I ask, when you went to the people, did you go and say, we're going to have a meeting and you're going to watch us have a meeting? Is that how you went to the people?
No.
No, right, that's right.
So
when Community Cabinet goes out, do people know that, is it actually Parliament they're watching, or is it just where the people get actually interact directly with the politicians without a meeting, saying just watch us meet?
yeah, so just to clarify, the briefing sessions won't be under standing orders, so there won't be the formality that's required. So
thank you then. Then that leads to further questions. Then how much time would be allocated to public question time?
So
public
Councillor
statements?
Gangel,
Yep.
as you saw, so
Yes.
we inadvertently.
Yep.
So in terms of the briefing session guidelines being rescinded, that would open up the scope for us to host the briefing sessions in whatever format
Okay,
worked.
yep.
So I know there's already been some discussion amongst the staff about how that potentially could look. And I'm imagining that they may come back to us with some proposals that would suit the various
Yep.
locations
So-
and topics that would be on the agenda.
So then I'll try and keep this as my final question. So then why, if the staff are going to have a look, staff are going to check out the suitability of buildings and the like, why was that not done before being presented to council as a fait accompli?
So there's already been a significant amount of work on this proposal behind the scenes. So we've actually put together instructional packs for children that might want to come with their parents so that they can learn more about what happens, in local government. We've also started to have a look at some potential venues in terms of options, but also what the meetings might look like, the structure of the meetings, the seating arrangements.
And so how many venues do we have in the town which are suitable for the meetings?
There's probably at least 7 or 8 I can think of at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Quinton has spoken for the motion. Would anybody else like to speak? No? Okay, so just in closing, I hear your concerns, Councillor Gangel. I think the suitability of the venues is something that we need to take seriously and make sure that they're accessible for all members of our community, and I trust the staff to investigate that thoroughly. I agree with you about the structured format. That's not an ideal way to go and engage with the community, but again, we are not limited to operating in a traditional manner, and I think there's great scope for us to be able to go at appropriate times to the community. So a perfect example might be the Western Power proposal for the underground project in Eden Hill, to go and speak to the community. So when Western Power hopefully comes and addresses us on that matter, the community could also be present to hear their briefing and be able to ask questions at that point in time. And if we structured the agenda in such a way that those items that were of interest to the community were right at the beginning of the meeting, there would be no obligation for them to stay for the whole time. And I agree with Councillor Quinton. It's a really novel way for us to attempt to engage people who may otherwise not be as involved in our community, and I definitely think it's worth the effort to try and see whether it's something that our community embraces. Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. So all those in favour, Councillor Wilson, Mikchuk, Hamilton, Quinton, McLennan, and against is Councillor Gangel, and that is carried. Town assets, Councillor Gangel, you had a question on the committee meeting?
Oh yes, thank you. Just a very quick one. Thank you for the report in relation to the Earl Perth Road street tree audit. I just wanted to know where to now from here in relation to the recommendations contained in the report.
So that's the Old Perth Road street trees report.
Yes, through the chair, this report will be incorporated into our street tree planting plan, but also needs to be incorporated into the overall plan for the Old Perth Road business centre, town centre.
Yeah, so in the report it does recommend the removal of a number of trees in Old Perth Road. So when you say it'll be incorporated into the planting, so the removal will be incorporated into the planting, so we'll remove the trees and put new trees in, that's the idea? Yep.
I think through the chair that's got to be considered by council through the upgrade plan that we present.
My understanding was that following, since the town assets received that report and had some comments, and then my understanding was we were going to have a workshop to discuss the tree planting program in general, and also have further discussions with the staff involved in the tree maintenance and so on within the town, not just about this issue but the trees more broadly. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Councillor Gantry, are you satisfied?
Yes, thank you. Yep.
Was that the only question that you
Yes,
had?
yep.
Thanks. Okay, so do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Quinton, seconded. Councillor McLennan, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. With Councillor Hamilton out of the room. 10:14, the design Basso. Councillor Gangel?
Yes, Your Worship. I was surprised to read, before council was informed anyway, just a question, Mr Tenter, as I pronounce it, advised the group that whilst the community's voice was clearly understood, the response rate has not been at the level of engagement that was hoped for. Members of the group took the opportunity to discuss with Mr Tanter the findings to date, what the lower than expected response rate could mean, and ways the participation levels could be improved. I'm just wondering, what is the lower than expected response rate, and what are some of the things that were identified in why we didn't get the response rate that we were anticipating for, and what was the initial response rate we were anticipating for?
I don't think there was a particular target, but there was certainly a really holistic strategy to try and reach everyone in our community, hence why we set up the Ideas Hub, which has been operating 5 days a week, plus on some weekends as well, but also going out to the community, doing breakfast radio with Eden Hill Primary School, a number of design workshops, a number of forums down at the shopping centre, ongoing polls throughout the exercise. So we really have tried a number of different strategies to try and reach as many people as possible in the community. Obviously, you can always do better in terms of community engagement, but this is a prerequisite to develop a local planning strategy, and it's about, the aspiration of our community. So it's a requirement that we must do, and I think what we've done is we've demonstrated that we've really attempted to try hard to reach everyone in our community. We can always do more, and I think we continue to build on.
So just before you ask another question, having attended the most recent design workshop, Alan Tranter was there at the time, and if I recall correctly, he was saying that he thought there'd been around 900 people engaged in the process at this point in time. Is that your recollection as well?
Yep, so I'm just wondering, because obviously there must have been some level put, because he said the level of engagement was not hoped for. So they obviously, you must have been referencing that for saying it's not the level of engagement that was hoped for.
So this was a value judgment by him, not by the town.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Is that the only questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so a mover for the officer recommendation. Councillor McLennan, seconded. Somebody. Councillor Mikachuk, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. 1017, Councillor Hamilton, you had a question about the determinations by the building surveyor?
Yep. The second and third items, may I ask the staff if retrospective approval relates to unauthorised works?
Correct. Through the chair, retrospective approval relates to works that have commenced without an approval first having been obtained.
May I inquire if there are fines associated with unauthorised works, and are these fines applied?
Thank you. Through the chair, there is the opportunity for the town to undertake prosecution action with respect to areas of non-compliance in relation to situations such as this, where an application is dealt with through a retrospective process. That process is not normally undertaken and did not occur with respect to these proposals.
So, final question. Do staff have a compliance officer who, no, these came up without authorisation. So, are we seeing an escalation of unauthorised works within the town in the last year or two?
Through the chair, we don't keep specific figures with respect to the number of retrospective applications, and anecdotally, I wouldn't have anything to suggest that the number of unauthorised works is increasing.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions? Okay, so we have a mover for the officer recommendation. Councillor Mikachuk. Yes, seconded. Councillor McLennan. All those in favour? Carried unanimously with Councillor Gangel out of the room. 1019, the council resolutions. Councillor Hamilton, did you have a proposal to defer this? Yes, I'm happy to second a deferral.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining your deferral is awaiting visibility of the dashboard. Yes?
So this is 1019.
Yes, sorry, Amy.
Sorry.
Is there anybody against? All those in favour? Carried unanimously with Councillor Gengel out of the room again. 1020, the quarterly report. Some questions on this item? We're up to 1020, Councillor Gengel, the quarterly report.
Just, there's only 3 questions. On page 4 of the quarterly report, under occupational health and safety, I note here that we've got load restraint training, 23rd and 30th of May and the 10th of June. 3 training courses for load restraint. Can I ask?
I'd have to take that on.
It just seemed a lot of training for load restraint, and I'm assuming this costs money. So if these things can be done in one hit, that would be excellent.
Maybe 3 individuals going.
Chair, may I?
Yes.
My understanding is for some of the staff that I have doing that work in the home and garden maintenance area participate in that training. And the reason there's 3 days is because not all staff are able to attend on the same day. Obviously because we need to maintain services. So there's 3 options, not all staff attending.
Okay. Really, in the end, it's irrelevant if there's a set price to attend a course somewhere, but if we're actually getting a trainer to come out to the town, then obviously there's escalated costs. So that's why I brought the question up out of curiosity. Page 13. Now, I did write to the CEO some time ago about rat baits, and I have expressed a concern twice now to council, once with the previous administration and once with the current administration, regarding secondary poisoning from rat baits from birds like owls and things like that. I know that we spend about $800 a month, from what I can see in the payment figures, on rat baits, and I would ask if the administration could investigate that and see if there's a safer way of doing it. So, page 18 is, I don't know what. There's a top of the page on page 18. It notes that there natural areas and river rehabilitation progressively in accordance with Department of Biodiversity. Quarterly site maintenance visits were undertaken by the town natural area contractor, along with biannual progress reports. And then down the bottom it says, according to best management practices. So I was wondering what those best management practices are for our bushlands, because it doesn't seem to give any indication there of what practices are being undertaken.
I could provide that in the bulletin for you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Gandro.
Just we are on the quarterly reports. I just want to ask, just for an update, I was wanting to know, just I suppose for Councillor Medichuk's benefit as well, the Weeds Forum. Where are we at with organisation and the planning of that? Do we have a date? Do we have a date for the Weeds Forum?
We don't have a date yet, but there has been some initial progress made to organise it. It's likely to be in November after caretaker.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, do we have a mover for DOS recommendation? Councillor Quinton, seconded. Councillor Mikachuk, all those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 10.21, Councillor Gangel, I'm sure you have some questions.
No, I don't really have questions. I'm going to speak against the item, but I will ask now that you raise it. So I just wanted to know, just with the 1920, the major and significant events sponsorship and grants guidelines, just wanted to know how much was available in the pool for round 1, which I notice opens tomorrow.
Yeah, so we actually haven't specified how much is available. What we have is a bucket of money, which is no more than what we've provided previously for events.
So then how do people know how much they can apply for then?
So we did actually originally have an up to figure on this,
yes,
and then it was removed. So the idea is that people provide a proposal, demonstrate the merit. It's something that we can certainly provide a fixed cap price on. But
I imagine that these applications, there'd be quite a lot of consultation with the staff. So in terms of applicants having an understanding about how much money would be available, would that be?
Yeah, in terms of, what we would consider.
So having done this process through the City of Swan, when you look at it, you go to the funding pool that says up to X amount, 5,000, up to 50,000, up to whatever it may be. But in Bassendean, we're going to say, just come to us with $200,000.
No. You'll notice that the smaller grants have got a fixed upper limit.
Yeah.
But for the major and significant events, we've actually
How
had
can you
to
pay it?
open
Yeah.
just to enable some flexibility.
And so council can't be told how much the overall amount of money is, and we can't be told how much the upper limit also is for applying.
So council approved the budget for the
Yeah,
events.
but we hide we hide the budget financials, the actual money allocations. So I can't ask how much we've got allocated for this, and we don't have an upper limit either. I think there's no. Anyway.
Can I just clarify? I don't see the resolution that we passed last week or at the budget meeting indicating that we wouldn't reveal how much money we'd allocated for events in our...
It's only for items that go to tender.
Yeah. So the community has visibility of how much money we are spending on events.
Can I ask then what is the amount allocated for this?
So, I think it was 300.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Quinton?
I'm just wondering why this policy hasn't gone out for community consultation like all of our other policies.
Yeah. I guess we do actually have a policy framework, and so what we've done is we've modified it. Yes, it could go out for consultation, but that would mean a delay in council considering it. We've actually, I guess, aligned our budget around a new way of doing sponsorships and grants. So whilst we haven't itemised every single event in the budget as we've done previous years, we've tried to actually align the budget with the new policy and governance framework. So the idea is that we run this for the term of this financial year, actually use it as an evaluation and then improve on it. But we have actually been talking to community groups about the new policy framework, and it pretty much builds on what we already have in place. So we already have some grants and sponsorship policies. What we're doing is rescinding those and building upon them to provide more rigour.
So you mentioned for this financial year, would the intention be to seek some formal feedback from the community groups who have been using this process at the end or towards the end of that period, so that then it can reshape it and tweak it if it needs to be?
Definitely. So the community would obviously have input after letting it run for a period, but also the town as well, like how manageable has it been from our perspective. What we have been finding is that we actually haven't been getting a lot of applications, particularly from community groups for grants.
I would also suggest that we haven't really advertised the grants previously very well, and I know from discussions I've had with you previously that there's an intention to make sure that this is advertised much more broadly, but I would see one of the barriers to previous applications being that people just didn't know what was available.
And just on that point then, might I add an 8th point to say that a report comes back to council to reflect what you've just stated about
at the end,
reviewing
towards the end of the financial year?
So that we can get a full understanding about how this has developed over that time.
Certainly.
So just what, Amy, are you comfortable with writing something up there, Amy, and then reading it out to us in a moment?
That a report be presented to council at the end of the financial year outlining...
Or maybe that we seek feedback from the community and a report come back to.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can we just finish this
Amy
point?
do this first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Peter, can you tell me again what you said?
Well, it was more reflecting what the CEO was saying in terms of reviewing the policy for the end of the financial year.
Madam Mayor.
Some council receives a report.
So on the draft policy, it didn't have a review date, so we want that to be next year. Yes, Councillor Hamilton?
Okay. This sort of relates to that amendment. I know that we do consult with the community, but my question to the administration would be, when a council is giving out money in the format of grants, what sort of feedback do you expect with if you're asking them what they want from the grants? I would expect that there would be feedback along the lines of more.
Yeah, I think there's probably two aspects to an evaluation. There's the process and the outcome. So I think we need to look at both of them. So how accessible were the grants? Was the process easy to follow? But also looking at did the grant actually achieve the outcome that was expected from both perspectives?
Okay, so
Your next, Councillor Gager.
coming back to that amendment, I have no problem with a review of the process and what have you, but to use the word community consultation, that to me doesn't gel with a review of the processes. So I don't. I'm sorry. What was the amendment?
We didn't say community consultation. We just said a review.
An evaluation report be presented to council at the end of the financial year.
Right. Are you comfortable with that? Question, Councillor Ganger.
Yes, thank you. Just wanting to know if this includes the funding proportion with major and significant events for Australia Day. And can I ask when the report on the evaluation of Australia Day will be coming for council's consideration?
Our CEO is saying that, Councillor Ganger. So I understand the way the budget has been struck, and I'm sure the Director of Corporate Services will tell me if I'm wrong. There's actually a $300,000 bucket for grants and civic events and the like, and then there's $200,000 that has been set aside for the potential Australia Day and the Fringe Festival.
Yep. So, but that's meant to be, so Australia Day, what I'm asking, and I'm not asking this for any campaign reason or anything like that, it's just simply to highlight my concerns with it. So, supposedly Australia Day fits under this, but yet it's not going to be put through this process.
Yes, it will.
So a report's going to come to council
Yes.
after it's gone to an independent panel for us to go ahead with Australia Day in January next year.
So
and when will that report come to
our
council?
proposal is likely to come in November, and we will follow as
For Australia
mentioned
Day.
in the paper of what the program will look like and the proposal, etc. So the idea of having a policy framework in place is that we would apply a similar standard to the town's events.
So we haven't approved Australia Day yet, that's what you're saying to me?
No.
Okay.
Australia Day is approved in the budget,
Yes.
but in terms of the rigour around the program,
Then what's coming
so
to council?
Council would see what the proposed program looks like and the expenditure and so on. I've got a couple of unrelated questions. Sorry. Is yours on the same topic?
Yes.
Okay, you ask your question then.
Following on from that, I thought that we had approved the Australia Day event for the coming year because the timelines were such
Yes.
that one could
Yes.
not alter
Yeah.
it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I just clarify, but the recommendation from this evaluation will be for future events, is that correct?
That's
So the
right.
staff are working on an event for Australia Day for 2020, yes?
That's right. That's right.
As per our
Okay, so the
usual
event
format.
in 2020 will take place, and then you're looking at an evaluation thereafter.
No, report's going to come in November.
So the idea was, whatever we're proposing in here as the new framework, is that we would apply the same level of rigour to ourselves, because it actually, from a governance perspective, it's useful. So the idea was that we would submit something to council so that they could actually have visibility of what was being proposed for Australia Day for 2020. So you would receive. So even though the funding's been approved, you would also approve the program of events that would occur on that day. Does that make sense?
What if
That
council
is a
didn't
bit
approve that?
different from what I thought was happening. So in the budget process, I was under the impression that we were, because of the timelines and what have you, that the staff indicating that the Australia Day event must proceed as usual, that's what we were approving, this bucket of money. But my expectation was not that it would be subject to this process and come back to us in November. So I am expressing surprise with that.
Okay.
I'll have other questions, but I'll let others go.
So it has been approved in the budget, and certainly if council would prefer not to see it, we will go ahead with the planning for Australia Day. I just thought from a good governance perspective, it was wise to provide you with, I guess, the proposal and how we were addressing it from a risk management perspective, so council would have visibility of what was being proposed. Even though it's being funded, what are you actually getting for that funding?
Okay, that's fine, but I'm assuming then that report would be noting.
That's right.
Because by that stage in November, there's absolutely no way that the staff could make any changes subject to council's whims at that point in time.
That's right.
So that's what I'm getting at. Right, okay, that's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Councillor Gilbert?
Yes, thank you. So, if I could just get an explanation, I'm not sure what is the rush with putting this through, considering earlier tonight we've approved 2 events, 2 sponsorships under the old, or the current, I should say, the current process. Why can we not actually take our time and have round 2 as round 1, for example, rather than trying to, for whatever reason, having to do round 1 in a rushed process?
Yeah, so I guess we do have another 2 submissions that we're dealing with, which are for larger sums of money for which the town does not have a policy to address.
Yes, but like we have done in the past, a report comes to council and council determines the allocation of funds based on the report presented to council.
So we would certainly continue down that vein without a policy and governance framework for those sort of events. That's an option.
Do you have another question, Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Quinton?
Oh, I just had a point about point 16, disability access and inclusion plan. I just wanted to make a point about an event I attended last year at the Oval, and a person with disability was unable to enter the event because the gates were locked, and it was very difficult. That person had to go all the way around. So I just wanted to make sure that it was very clearly defined to our events applicants that they are bound by the disability and inclusion plan, but that also the ranger could pop out and make sure that those things are being complied to in some way, because a lot of these events happen on weekends.
I would actually have to take that on notice, because once the certainly those checks are done when the application's made and the agreement's put in place, but actually what happens on the day, I would actually have to take that on notice.
Through the chair, with larger events that will certainly be the case, particularly events that the town is hosting. With the smaller events, that is not always the case in terms of how we monitor that. But certainly, I think it would be prudent, depending on what the event is. You know, if it's a small event, you know, and for a small amount of money, and is not involving a large group, perhaps if it was in a group's, you know, home base in terms of the centre or wherever they run out of, then it wouldn't be appropriate, but certainly in other situations it would be appropriate. But it's part of the policy and it would certainly be expected to be addressed in the application.
Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
Firstly, I do understand that the administration is attempting to level the playing field and make a more equitable processes. So for that, thank you. We do have lots of questions, and I have another question in that initially when we were talking about this in a workshop some time ago, we were looking at, originally there was going to be 50% funding from the town, up to 50% funding, and then the rest was going to be in kind. Then that was changed. Now what I'm struggling with is understanding who makes the decision about how much of the in-kind comes from the community group and how much funding comes from the town? When in the process is that decision actually made? Is it made before it comes to council and then it's presented to council, or are council involved in that decision?
No, the decision is made by council. So we have officers that go out and speak to community groups in terms of what's available in the way of grants and sponsorships, but also we'll actually provide advice on filling out the forms and helping officers. The way this framework would operate is then an independent and separate group of officers would then assess the merit of that proposal. So specifically look at, I guess, how much they're seeking, but what sort of return would the town likely get, and is it a good deal? So we look at things like, the economic, social outcomes and so on. How much are they expecting, and what sort of, I guess, ripple effect would that create in our community? And then a report over the top of the proposal would then be provided to council with a recommendation. And the recommendation may actually suggest that less money be provided, but it's council's decision.
I'm going to ask my unrelated questions while Councillor Humphrey gets her thoughts together. Just on page 78, it refers to grants that have no changes being made to them, and it references the kids' sport grants. I'm just wondering what the status of that is, because my understanding was that we were no longer giving the kids' sport grants and hadn't made a financial allocation, but Councillor Quinton pointed out that Bayswater is still doing that, and I'm just unclear as to what's happening with that particular scheme. I'm not sure if anybody knows here tonight, but it's that could be.
No changes have been made to those three particular grants. They remain as they are for the time being.
Sorry, I'm trying to...
I'm not sure. Councillor Quinton, do you recall what Councillor Hamilton?
I've seen...
Yes, the Mayor of the City of Bayswater put a post on his Facebook page saying that they had allocated $20,000 in their current budget for kids' sports grant applications.
And I'm sure we were told previously that it was no longer the local governments who were giving out kids' sport, that it was directly, I don't know whoever it is, Department of Sport and Rec or whoever it may be.
I suspect it's the kids' sport program, but the City of Bayswater tops it up. Let me just check my message from him, because I did ask.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a fairly small issue, but it was just something that we'd had flagged us previously, and I thought it was no longer.
Is this the grants for individual families with healthcare cards?
Yes. Yeah. There was a previous discussion that we had that something had changed. I was just surprised to see it here again because we didn't allocate money for it, I believe.
No, I was just talking to Director Corporate Services, and he indicated similar to councillors, and that it is
So we don't actually do that anymore.
Almost definitely. Yeah, they are still on the website, and my understanding was...
I don't think they're our grants though anymore. But anyway, it was just something that was a discrepancy. Councillor Hamilton?
Okay. Well, I don't know the status of them, but
we'll follow.
There have been some recently in the payment figures.
Okay.
But my question during the previous administration was, why were we allocating kids' sports grants to people outside the town? I found that to be, if we're trying to encourage participation within the town, and there were a significant number that were being allocated, and also it appeared that there's supposed to be an upper limit, and there appeared to be some doubling up of the funds going to some of these grants.
Because it's done by clubs, and clubs often have players outside of the town.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
My other question was about, so it's probably duplicated, but specifically on the community benefits grant, like point 18 is referring to submitting proposals, and it says to be submitted on the published and approved application form and emailed to. Now I appreciate that our IT is not stellar, but is it possible that when we're introducing new things that we start to try and make them more automated? So like, is it possible to have an online form, or at least a form with fields that people, so we can start to try and move in that direction and submit them electronically? Or I just thought we've got it written here as being, again, you print something out, you fill it in, you scan it, email it back in. It would be great if gradually we could start to move to being a little bit more, or a little bit less manual. I'm not sure whether it's possible now, but yeah. That's when possible. Like, it's not necessarily for this one, but it would be great. Other questions? Okay, well in that case, Councillor Quinton, have you moved the motion with the extra point 8 with the, would you like to read the point 8, Amy, if you wouldn't mind?
That an evaluation report be presented to council at the end of the financial year.
So are you happy to move that, Councillor Quinton?
Sure.
Is there a seconder with that point 8? I'll second the motion. Well, Councillor Wilson has seconded the motion. I'm sure there's speakers against. So, Councillor Quinton, would you like to open debate?
Yeah, so this conversation initially came up through the People Services Committee and also approaches that I had from events organisers who were finding it frustrating to put events on in town. And we at the People Services Committee wanted to make it a more flexible and equitable playing field for anybody that wanted to put on an event in the town, be that a vintage car event, something down the entirety of Old Perth Road. But the process was slow and onerous. It also meant that there might be double ups of similar things. So we asked the staff to go away and come back with something that was a bit more equitable and flexible. I think this is a pretty good compromise from what we have seen so far. I'm most particularly interested in getting a report back by the end of the financial year, just to see if there have been any issues that come up. There is an assessment panel. I note that elected members are not allowed to be on the panel, but a report will come back to council, I hope, am I correct? Yes. About what that panel has recommended, because we do want to attract and we do want to make it easier for people to come to the town and do their events, particularly if they've been trying to do that for a while and we have had competing interests, which has been an issue for the town. It's not been an issue for really successful events, but we have had issues of competing interests trying to get events here, and I think this is part way there. It's probably not perfect, but you know what policy is. So I'd be interested to see by the end of the financial year how it's gone.
Thank you, Councillor Quinton. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I waive my speaking rights on this.
Councillor Ganjo?
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, just to make it clear, I'm actually not against the policy framework or moving towards this policy framework. What I'm against is the time frame in which we're doing it. The round one sponsorship includes, as endorsed in the budget last week, some events that have already been put through as line items, including Australia Day. Now, the provision is supposedly this is to go to a panel. The panel's meant to assess it, come back to council, and council ultimately makes a decision whether or not it will proceed. What we have in this case is a situation where the round one applications are largely filled, that we're actually advertising tomorrow. Report will come back potentially for a special council meeting for at least one of them, I believe. So it's I just don't see the transparency and accountability in the process that we're putting out there. I believe we should actually. There's no rush. There's no need. We have, as we've done tonight, already approved funding in the way we have done it in the up till now, and I don't see a need to try and push this through tonight. So therefore we can somehow align allocations that we've already got in. So we're pushing it through tonight, aligning them with allocations that's already in. So I don't understand that personally. The other thing is, certainly having done funding events previously, I've never seen a case where you don't know what your upper limit is that you can apply for. I mean, how do you even start? if you don't know what your upper limit is. You say, well, I want 100,000. The town comes back and says, oh, we'll give you 10. I mean, there's a big discrepancy between what somebody potentially applied for online, and everybody says, oh, talk to the staff. Well, when you do funding applications, you don't talk to the staff in the first instance. You download the application and you start filling it in. Then you might talk to staff who then say, well, looking at this, we're going to give you 10,000 rather than 100,000. I just don't think that there's just some bits that just need to be tightened up before we actually implement this. I mean, I may be wasting my breath, but I'll put that point forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gangel. Any other speakers? Councillor Quinton, did you want to close? Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan, and against Councillor Gangel, and that is carried. We're now on item 10.22, which is a variation to the men's shed and associated works contract. Questions? Councillor Gadget?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just looking at Council's policy, I note we're going to be removing quite a number of trees, and would just like to know if the town will be establishing a sign there that so does any offender on a verge.
I think you're referring to our tree vandalism policy.
That's absolutely correct, Your Worship.
Yes, which refers to verge trees which are removed illegally.
Just verge trees, not on public land?
That's right.
Just verge. So none of this is classified the riverbank verge or the stream verge or anything like that. Just want to check.
Councillor Hamilton?
Since Councillor Gangel has brought it up, has there been any progress on negotiating with the neighbours of the property about tree planting that supposedly might happen with their consent at some stage in the future?
Yes, through the chair, we have discussed it with the neighbours. We haven't got a favourable response as yet, but they are we are waiting on the response.
So shocking to actually hear that. So will that potential tree planting or non-tree planting come back to council for our information in the future?
Yes, I believe we can do that.
Okay. Right.
Can I just ask a clarification of a comment that's made in the report on page 83? It says that although the building was to be predominantly occupied by males, the likelihood of more diverse community uses necessitated the need for an extra toilet cubicle. What was on the original plans? Was it just purely male toilets, or I'm finding it difficult to understand what that means?
The wording in the report could have been better.
Okay.
It was the main driver was this issue was identified as a risk in the early stages of putting the project together. Mm-hmm. One way of managing the risk is we could have done the design first and then put it out to tender. Yep. The way the town decided to put the contract out was a design and construct. Then that creates the risk of the certifier's decision-making process, which was well covered by the building surveyor's Callan. Yeah, no, it's Callan. The building certifier. So he'd well covered that risk, and we had his expertise in that assessment as we move forward. It was really to do about the numbers. The certifier felt that the current concept plan would allow for 100 people, whereas we were pushing for 150 to enable the space to be utilised by more people and more diverse range of people.
Great, thank you.
So the wording could have been better.
No, that's fine. I understand now. I just was a bit confused as to what had originally been proposed. Thank you. I appreciate that. Councillor Hamilton?
So that actually makes me even more confused, because from the very onset of this project, it was supposed to be not only a men's shed but a combined community space, with that space, community space, to be available to community. And
So I think what Phil is saying is that the wording in the report implies it being just for men, but it was actually the issue of the capacity rather than that it was just being designed for men. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 100 is
However,
compared to
I'm
100.
confused why the capacity would not automatically assume, given that half the space was going to be community space, that half the people would be women anyway. I'm just confused by the assumptions that have been made in this process from the very beginning.
The building surveyor describes the situation very well, in that it becomes somewhat subjective in what our own building surveyor would, and we've tried to cover this in the report, on what our own building surveyor would cover as compared to what this certifier will certify as part of the design and construction process.
Any further questions? Okay, so we've got an officer recommendation there. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Councillor Gangel, seconded Councillor Wilson. Anybody against? Councillor Hamilton, do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Hamilton?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Gangel, did you want to debate?
Oh, did I move it? Did I? I thought it was Councillor Wilson. Okay. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Look, this has come back to Council. Obviously needs to be considered tonight. Was able to be put on an agenda without urgent business, so people in the community got notification that it was on the agenda. Very happy to approve this. Obviously, they've done some evaluations as you do from time to time, and there was obviously this requirement just to make the change. Therefore, I very much support the recommendation being put to Council. So hopefully, we'll be able to get our men's shed constructed sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Worship. Happy to second this motion. Share all of Councillor Gangel's sentiments. Long-time supporter of this project, and I'd like to see it up and running as expeditiously as possible for the well-being of the people who will use it once it's completed.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I certainly support establishment of a men's shed within our town, and certainly harboured high hopes for development of a good asset to be created on the site that I identified at Mayholman some 22 months ago. There are obviously shortcomings in our processes in respect to tender, especially re this matter where the tender was capped despite an opposite recommendation from Walga. This is a development where the outcomes are perhaps variable, and the approved, well, they're variable on the approved budget, really. What we're doing now is we're varying the approved budget. So one has to ask.
It's within budget.
Well, it's within budget, but it's also now more than what was quoted at the last meeting where this was passed. So, so it's variable. It has a bit of an up and down thing happening here. So I'm voting against this, which is no surprise to councillors. It is a surprise to me that it's come to this, given how enthusiastic I was about this project in the beginning and given what high hopes I had for a good outcome. So that is surprising to me. But it's no surprise that I am where I am now, given what we are getting for our money. So I'm voting against it. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Ganjo, did you wish to speak again?
Oh, why not? Why not? I haven't spoken enough tonight. I don't quite understand, to be honest, Councillor Hamilton's objection to this amendment that's been made, alteration that's been made. It's the alteration we're discussing, not the overall project.
Yeah.
I think it makes common sense. I mean, we are not discussing the project. This is not about whether or not you believe that the destruction of potentially 15 mature trees should go without punishment, without signage saying that there was once one magnificent trees on the site, and follow perhaps the council policy as so would anybody else of a verge tree. But that's not what we're voting on. That's not what we're voting on. We're not voting on the project. We're not voting on the style, the structure of the shed. We're voting on a variation to make sure there's more use for the facility, to make sure there's the appropriate toilets available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ganjo. And I would just like to make the point, as much as you know that I am completely horrified when trees are removed, that we are not going against council policy by removing the trees. So just to be clear,
that's right.
that is
we support everybody land clearing.
Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, Councillor Wilson, Ganjo, Mikachuk, Quinton and McLennan, and against is Councillor Hamilton, and that is carried. Moving on to 10.24, that's just the calendar, and I believe that's taken out just so that we can remove those committee meetings on Wednesday the 4th of September, Tuesday the 10th of September and Wednesday the 11th of September in accordance with the resolution we made earlier this evening. So I'm happy to move that with those adjustments. Is there a seconder? Councillor Quinton, all those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Moving on to 11.1, which is Councillor Quinton's notice of motion relating to the installation of the shade at skate park. Are there questions for the staff on this?
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton?
Hang on, I'll let someone else go first.
Councillor Ganjo. Yes, not opposed to this. Just want to maybe ask the mover, maybe the most appropriate person. Just with the skating rink and what have you. I did raise this last week. Is there another one that you know of that has the shade and everything enclosed with it? No? Okay, just wanted to check.
I've got a question as well. Again, I'm not opposed to shade in this location, but I'm aware that there's lots of locations around the town that could do with additional shade. And I'm likely to support this, but just in terms of us doing things in a manner that identifies priorities rather than sort of picking things that we happen to notice, is there some way that we can incorporate this into maybe our open space review or whatever it is that we're doing so that we know what else we may need to address in the future and not do things so sort of haphazardly?
Yeah, certainly it would fit within our town centre plan or the open space development plan, but they wouldn't be immediate. There's some conceptual planning there that needs to occur.
Yeah, I'm talking more for future.
Yeah.
Did you have a question, Councillor?
Yeah, it actually then raised a question. Just if it is semi-covered and stuff, just what effect that would then have on, for example, in the evening when we've got the lights on, because then the lights would be hitting cover rather than actually hitting the skate rink itself. Oh, it's a legitimate concern if you got.
Sure, and I'm not a shade expert.
Yeah.
At night time with lights on, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
This is why we're going out and asking for a report to come back.
Yeah, okay, very good.
Councillor Hamilton?
Can I ask a question of the mover? Your dot point one, staff engage with the users of the Bassendean Youth Centre to determine their desire to, you've got to construct summertime shade, which implies something a little bit different from your background information down the bottom where you've got shade sails or more trees. I mean, I'm thinking that instead of construct you should have summertime shade there instead of, because it may well be that it may be, I don't know, it depends on the report that staff bring back, but is it potentially, is it potential for the staff to actually plant fast-growing shade trees? That's another question. I don't know. Until you do the report, I'm not sure. But construct seems to indicate one particular part.
Can I just make a point on that? The sentence says their desire to construct summertime shade.
Okay.
Because my understanding, having spoken to the staff, is that the users of the skate park ask for this every single summer. And every single summer, they get told it's up to council. And they've been asking for years and years and years. So the sentence assumed, because it's true, that the users, the kids of this space, have been asking and asking for this shade for years. So the sentence goes to their desire to construct summertime shade.
Just on that point, it would be good if that kind of feedback is captured in some way, maybe through we've had the minutes of the Youth Advisory Committee through here, and at no time have I seen that feedback. So it would be great if that forum was used to feed back some of those things to council so that we have an awareness of those needs, because it's certainly the first time I've seen it come to the attention of council. Do you have a question, Councillor Hamilton? Can I just ask about the 3-month time frame? Just aware of all the things that are going on at the moment. Is that something that's our youth staff happy to prioritise their time?
I would certainly be asking Greg Neary to lead on this.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it back in November.
Councillor Hamilton? Okay, there's no further questions. Councillor Quinton has moved the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilson. Anybody against? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Are there any announcements of notices of motion for the next meeting? In which case, we'll move on to confidential business, and I'll ask all to turn on 35 p.m. And
9:35.
Oh, sorry, 9:35 p.m. Sarah, just your question